Today we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting unlike fractions. By unlike fractions, I mean we're going to have two fractions where the denominators are not the same. So in the first fraction, the denominator might be a 2. Second fraction, the denominator might be a 3. So the first thing that we're going to focus on is adding unlike fractions. I have two steps here for you. Step 1, find the common denominator. And then step 2, create fractions with similar denominators. So with step 1, you have two different ways of finding a common denominator. The first way is to multiply the denominators. The second way that you can do it is you can find the greatest common factor . So, let's look at the first example. We have 2/3 and we have 1/2. So, we have to find a common denominator. So, let's look at the first one, at the first way to do it. You can multiply the denominators. So, if we multiply the denominators, if we have 3 and we have 2, if we multiply them, we can have a common denominator of 6. So, that is step 1. Find the common denominator. So our common denominators are 6. Step 2, create fractions with similar denominators. Now, we have to find an equivalent fraction of 2/3 that has 6 in the denominator. So think of it like this. How many times does 3 go into 6? To go from 3 to 6, you have to multiply it by 2. If you multiply the denominator by 2, you also have to multiply the numerator by 2. So if we multiply the numerator by 2, 2 times 2 is 4. So 2/3 and 4/6 are equivalent fractions. This is a fraction with a similar denominator. So, same thing with this 1/2. How many times does 2 go into 6? You have to multiply this by 3 to get to 6. So 2 times 3 is 6, and whatever we do to the denominator, we have to multiply the same to the numerator. So we have to multiply the numerator by 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. Now we can just add these together. Now that we have similar fractions, we have 4/6 plus 3/6 is equal to 7/6, because all we had to do, add straight across, keep the denominators the same, so we have 7/6. If we put that into a mixed number, we would have 1 and 1/6 as our final answer. Alright, so now we have 3/5 plus 1/3. Remember the first thing that we have to do? Find our common denominator. One thing that we can do is multiply the denominators. So 5 times 3 is 15. This is also the greatest common factor between the two. So, how many times does 5 go into 15? 5 goes into 15 3 times. And if we multiply the denominator by 3, we have to multiply the numerator by 3. So 3 times 3 is equal to 9. Now let's go over to the next fraction. How many times does 3 go into 15? 3 goes into 15 5 times. So if we multiply the denominator by 5, we have to multiply the numerator by 5. So 1 times 5 is 5. So now we can just add straight across, because that's what we've learned with like fractions. So 9 plus 5 is 14. And then we keep the denominators the same, so our final answer is 14/15. Now what I want you to do is to pause the video, try the next one yourself, and unpause the video to see what I've done. Alright, so if we have 2/7 and 3/14. remember, there's two different ways that you can find the common denominator. One, you could multiply the denominators, but do you really want to multiply 7 and 14 together? Not really. I mean, you could, but it would probably take a little bit longer. But think about what the greatest common factors are. Isn't 7 a factor of 14? So couldn't we just keep the denominator as a 14? So let's see, how many times does 7 go into 14? 7 goes into 14 2 times. So how many times? So if we multiply the denominator by 2, we have to multiply the numerator by 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. If we notice on the second fraction, 14 is exactly the same. So we don't really have to create equivalent fractions. We can just keep the fraction exactly the same. So I'll put 3 over here as well. So we add straight across. 4 plus 3 is equal to 7. Keep the denominator the same of 14. And then we must always simplify. 7/14 is the exact same as 1/2. And 1/2 is our final answer. Now we're going to be working with some mixed numbers. So one of the first things you can do with a mixed number, change the mixed numbers into improper fractions. So let's just first rewrite this, the first problem that we're working with. We have -3/10 plus -5 3/4. So let's rewrite it so that we have all improper fractions instead of any mixed numbers. So we'll have -3/10 plus -4 goes into, or 4 times 5 is 20, plus 3 is 23. So we'd have -23/4. Alright, now we have to find what the greatest, or now we have to find a common denominator. So we could multiply them across 2, so we could use the common denominator of 40, but there's also another thing that we could do. We could find the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor of 10 and 4 is actually 20, because 10 times 2 is 20, and 4 times 5 is 20. So we can use the common denominators of 20. So how many times does 10 go into 20? It's 2. So if we multiply by 2 in the denominator, we have to multiply by 2 in the numerator. So -3 times 2 is equal to -6. So if we have 4, how many times does 4 go into 20? 4 goes into 20 5 times. And -23 times 5 is equal to -115. So now we have -6/20 plus -115/20. So all we have to do is just add straight across. So -6 plus -115 is equal to -121. Keep the denominators the same. So we need to simplify this and make it into a mixed number. So think, how many times does 20 go into 121? So 20 times 6 is equal to 120, with 1 left over. So it would be 6, 1, and 1 left over of 1/20. And also remember, it's a negative, so it's -6 and 1/20. And this is your final answer. So what I want you to do, pause the video, try the next one yourself, unpause it to see what I've done. Alright, so if we have 3 3/5 plus -4 and 5/6, first thing, change the mixed numbers into improper fractions. So 5 times 3 is 15, 15 plus 3 is 18, so we have 18/5 plus we have 6 times 4 is 24, plus 5 is 29. 6. That is a negative as well. So we can find a common denominator. So it looks like one of the common denominators that we could use if we multiply 5 and 6 is 30. So now we have to think, how many times does 5 go into 30? 5 goes into 30 6 times. So if you're multiplying by 6 in the denominator, you have to multiply by 6 in the numerator. So 18 times 6 is equal to 108. So now we have the next fraction. If we have 6 goes into 30 5 times, so if we multiply by 5 in the denominator, we must multiply by 5 in the numerator. So 29 times 5 is equal to 145. Remember, this is a negative sign. So now we add like fractions. So 30 stays on the bottom. So now we have 108 plus a negative 45. So that is equal to 37. So if you make this into an improper fraction, or if we make this into a mixed number, 30 goes into 37 one time with 7 left over, and 30 keeps it as the denominator. Remember that these are negative. So our final answer is negative 1 7/30. Now we're going to move into subtraction. This is the main point. Subtracting unlike fractions is exactly like you're adding unlike fractions, except you're just going to subtract instead of add. So we have 3/8 minus 3/4. Remember, the same exact thing. Find a common denominator. We could multiply 8 and 4 to make 32, but since 8 is one of the greatest common factors between the two, we'll just keep 8 as the common factor, or as the common denominator. So we don't really have to change anything from the first fraction, so we'll just keep that as 3/8. So how many times does 4 go into 8? 4 times 2 is 8, so if we multiply by 2 in the denominator, we must multiply by 2 in the numerator. So 3 times 2 is 6. Now if we just subtract straight across, the denominator stays as an 8. Numerator, 3 minus 6 is equal to a negative 3. So our answer is negative 3/8. So what I want you to do is to pause the video, try this second one yourself, and unpause the video when you're ready to see what I have done. Alright, so if we have 9 3/5 minus 7 2/3, remember, must change the mixed number into an improper fraction first. So if we have 5 times 9 is 45, 45 plus 3 is 48, so we have 48/5 minus 3 times 7 is 21, 21 plus 2 is 23 thirds. So now we have to find the common denominator between the two. We could just multiply these two. So if we have 5 and 3, 5 times 3 is 15. So we could just use 15 as the common denominator. So how many times does 5 go into 15? 5 times 3 is 15. So if we multiply by 3 in the denominator, we must multiply by 3 in the numerator. So 48 times 3 is equal to 144. So if we move to the second one, how many times does 3 go into 15? 3 times 5 is equal to 15. So if we multiply by 5 in the denominator, we must multiply by 5 in the numerator. So 23 times 5 is equal to 115. So now we just subtract straight across, and we have 15 is in the denominator. 144 minus 115 is equal to 29. If we want to make this into into a mixed number, 29 or 15 goes into 29 one time with 14 left over. So keep the denominators the same of 15. So our final answer is 1 and 14/15.